Hello, my friends. It looks like we have some juicy insider news to cover today. And the crybabies over at PlayStation are not having a great day. So let's get into it and let's see what's going on. Let's do it.
Hey everyone, it's Endymion, and in this video, I got you a lot of insider scoops when it comes to Sony PlayStation right now.
Nice.
From the whole Sony wants to buy Elden Ring developer From Software and why that's happening, Naughty Dog being a bully allegedly behind the scenes to other dev studios, Ghost of Yote, Tsushima Info, Horizon, Spider-Man, God of War, even Wolverine.
Wow.
There's just so much to go over, so let's just get into it right now.
Buckle up.
So one of my most trusted sources has got me a lot here. This is the same source I have for CD Projekt Red, Dune Awakening, Assassin's Creed, and more. They talked to someone who works at Sony in a relatively high position within the company who just spilled the beans to them because they want the public to know what's happening. And the way my source told me this entire scoop and all this information should be basically titled A Civil War between Sony Japan and America.
Nice.
Okay, let's get into it. So I guess we can start with the whole From Software Sony thing because I know you guys really want to know more about that for sure. So unless you don't know, Sony is attempting to buy Kadokawa, which is a larger company that owns about 70% of the shares of From Software, which makes games like Elden Ring, Bloodborne, Dark Souls, and so on.
Wow.
Sony right now has about 14% shares in Kadokawa already, and Tencent, the Chinese mega company, has some shares too. I don't know the exact amount though. Anyway, Sony is trying to buy out Kadokawa and own the company completely and all of their studios.
Wow.
We know this is true because Insider Gaming also confirmed this as well, where Kadokawa released a statement about this which said, "There are some articles on the acquisition of Kadokawa Corporation here and after the company by Sony Group Incorporating. However, this information is not announced by the company. The company has received an initial letter of intent to acquire the company's shares. But no decision has been made at this time. If there are any facts that should be announced in the future, we will make an announcement in a timely and appropriate manner." So yes, this is 100% real. It's something that is happening, and Sony PlayStation wants to own Kadokawa. And in turn, there are other studios like From Software and even places like Spike Chunsoft, which also made Dragon Ball Sparking Zero. Okay, with that out of the way to confirm, now here's what my sources told me about all of this. Firstly, the reason for this is because Sony Japan wants to refocus their game divisions much more on the Japanese-led side of development. By the way, I should say that a lot of these problems have to do with Sony Japan versus Sony America, but I'll get into that in a bit. From what I'm told by my source, the reason why Sony Japan wants to own Kadokawa and From Software is because they are extremely frustrated by the constant underperformances of their Western-led projects.
And I wonder why they're always underperforming these days. Could it be because of all the woke stuff, all the ideology that's being crammed down everyone's throat? I think so.
We're talking things like God of War, The Last of Us, and of course Concord being a big thorn in their side right now and how that all went down.
Yeah.
Sony Japan is very angry that what used to be a promising Western push by their teams over in Sony America, that they're no longer making the big hits that they were accustomed to having before. As I'm told, Kadokawa entering PlayStation's brand and in turn From Software is seen as a massive opportunity in Sony Japan's eyes to vastly strengthen and rebuild their PlayStation brand into what they deem is important and what PlayStation should stand for as a platform in the future. So they see things like Elden Ring's success, the constant love for properties like Dark Souls or Sekiro, to be something that should be intrinsically tied to what Sony Japan wants to continue and foster in the future, which I think we can all agree that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because if you ask me, From Software is the greatest game development studio right now. Without question, nobody comes close to them. It's not a contest. I don't want to hear it. Whatever you put up against them, From Software clears it. So it makes sense to want to acquire them for whatever amount of money Sony needs to pay in order to make it happen. However, there is a big problem here for Sony Japan and their vision, which is Tencent, the Chinese mega corporation that owns a lot of things across the industry. They even own Snapchat as well. in case you didn't know that. So if you like sending, I don't know, pics of your butthole to people on Snapchat, Tencent probably has a copy on their server somewhere. Sorry to
What?
break it to you. However, from what I'm told, Katakawa's CEO, who is Japanese of course, does not want the company to be under Chinese control, and is fighting to keep the company under Japanese rule instead. This, of course, works massively in Sony's favor since, of course, they're Japanese.
Yeah.
Tencent, however, as I'm told, is still hell-bent on owning Katakawa so that they can gain full control of From Software too. But
Yeah, and their fingers are all over Ubisoft as well. The Tencent looks like they're just trying to gobble everything up right now. And I don't know if that's good or bad.
as it stands right now, Katakawa is a weird bidding war between Sony and Tencent. And Sony, from what I'm told, wants to completely change their outlook going forward when it comes to how they make their games and who they are making those games for. They want to be seen as a Japanese first developer, creating experiences more in line with what they used to be known for as opposed to now.
Right.
But that's the whole story so far as I'm told about From Software. So either way, this story will end with someone owning them, I guess, no matter what.
Yeah,
I
that's
do
interesting.
fear that this could cause Miyazaki to leave From Software and start his own company or something. If whoever ends up owning it, ruins their image or future. God, I hope not, for all our sakes. Also,
That's
I
the
got
risk.
information on why you haven't seen a remaster for Bloodborne either too. So this, as I'm told, is not Sony Japan's fault, but actually Sony America's. Like I said, Sony Japan wants to revert PlayStation back to its heritage, but Sony America wants to maintain what has been happening there more recently. Stuff like the Horizon remaster and Last of Us Part 1 remake, those are decisions that have been primarily made by Sony America, who sees those sorts of games as PlayStation's future. They want to continue to foster these sorts of games over what Sony Japan wants to prioritize, which is more From Software-esque experiences, if you will. As I'm told, Sony America is actually responsible for why you haven't seen a Bloodborne remaster, because Sony America sees Bloodborne, despite the huge demand for it, as a niche title. And they don't see that game and what it represents as what they want to push as the future of PlayStation. Yes, I know this is stupid of them and insane. Don't shoot the messenger, okay? I'm just telling you what I was told. They don't see Bloodborne as important, and it's why Sony America pushes instead for remasters of Horizon Zero Dawn instead.
Well, I mean, does Bloodborne really need a remaster? I mean, I don't think Horizon Dawn needed a remaster, but I don't know. But yeah, Bloodborne did really well, so it is kind of crazy that they wouldn't try to do more to, take a double dip, add some profits on that game, because I think people would buy it for sure.
Which, by the way, apparently bombed and didn't do well. Go figure. So did the Horizon Lego game. Apparently that bombed on Steam as well. Even Blue Point Games, the people who remade Demon Souls, they are apparently being directed by Sony America to remake more westernized projects. But I wasn't given exact names of any kind in terms of which game or franchise they're working on currently. All of this is disappointing to me, but like my source told me, there is a genuine woke civil war of some kind at Sony right now between its two halves. The Sony Japan side wants more Japanese studios in their wing, making more Japanese-centric content, while Sony America is resisting this and wants their future to be more DEI, Horizon slop that...
I just don't understand. I don't understand it. I just don't get it. And like how ingrained that ideology has been in the industry. It's it's so sad. So sad. But I mean, hopefully with the red shift in America on the whole, I mean, it has to affect the gaming industry, I would think. But I think they're going to be behind in the transition out of wokeness, so to speak. But I think they will make it.
Nobody seems to care about because it pushes agenda. So let's speak about wokeness, agenda, and all of that now. It's time to shift this video to Sony America. Because, oh my god, man, there's a lot to go through with what I'm being told. So pretty much, Sony America is responsible for what is killing Sony. There's no other way to put it to you guys.
Yeah,
They are the
Totally.
ones responsible for all the things you don't like. The female-led future games, the diversity being forced, pronouns, all of it. Sony Japan, as I'm told, they hate this stuff, but Sony America has turned into its own beast, if you will, thanks to the success of games like the first Last of Us, and especially once things like God of War 2018 and Spider-Man 2018 came out, which both did amazing. These sorts of releases, as I'm told, have given Sony America vast power and leverage in the years since. This then brings us to what I'm being told is the first massive crack in Sony America's armor, which is Naughty Dog, the dev studio. You likely know Naughty Dog made Uncharted and The Last of Us, Jak and Daxter, etc. They were the golden goose in terms of Sony America's power and leverage.
And I mean, and that's because it was such a good game. Last of Us was, I mean, it's a masterpiece in every aspect. The sequel was pretty good for the most part, I guess. But the first one, chef's kiss.
Because whenever Sony Japan said, "Why are we doing this?" Naughty Dog would deliver up something that would break the barriers and ceiling in terms of sales and reception. And Naughty Dog is responsible for the massive Western push in terms of Sony America's ideology and future viewpoints, if you will. But
yeah, that's no good. I didn't know that. Oh, I thought Naughty Dog was going to be the courageous one to stand up against all the ideology stuff.
this first massive crack in the armor was actually Last of Us Part 2. As my sources person at Sony told them, The Last of Us Part 2 fell well behind on expectations for Sony financially. The original game sold around 17 million copies on PS3, which was then boosted by the PS4 remaster. Sony America hyped up Part 2 to do even better given how large PS4's player base was by 2020, and initial sales were strong, but ultimately Part 2 sold about 10 million, which is about a 40% drop compared to Part 1. This then led to Sony Japan, as I'm told, starting an internal investigation into Sony America's performance. And one of the big schisms was Last of Us 2, which Sony Japan accused Sony America of pulling too many.
I mean, between 1 and 2, you could definitely see that ideological shift in at Naughty Dog with the sequel. I mean, you know, especially the elephant in the room with the trans character. And then, of course, you know, she's in a lesbian relationship and yada, 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 which, I mean, it's all good, but it's, you know, they definitely start putting the ideology right in your face in the second one. Yeah, it was nowhere to be found in the first one.
Resources into Naughty Dog, and the payoff wasn't worth it. And then Sony Japan used Ghost of Tsushima as the sort of game that perfectly represented what Sony should be doing instead. Since it was made by a Western studio, Sucker Punch in this case, but was obviously a Japanese love letter to their history and culture. By the way, Sony Japan made note to say that Tsushima sold around 13 million copies, which is around 3 million more than Last of Us 2, with far less promotion and budget too. This led to what my source called a broader realization within Sony internally, which was that the entire company's catalog then on was struggling to reach the milestones or status quo of previous titles. Then another big crack in Sony America's armor happened, which was Spider-Man 2. It sold around 10 million so far, which compared to Spider-Man 2018 was about 69%, nice, less sales than the previous game. Spider-Man 2018 sits currently at around 33 million copies sold so far. God of War Ragnarok was also another big crack in the armor for Sony America too. Ragnarok, as of now, apparently has sold about 15 million copies compared to God of War 2018, which sold around 23 million copies. Another massive blunder and bust for Sony actually was also Horizon Forbidden West, which according to this source has sold only around 8 million copies, compared to Zero Dawn, which originally pushed around 20 million, so less than 50% compared to the first one there as well.
Yeah, I mean, when the first one came out, I mean, I remember when it was announced, and everybody was just like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. Like, they were just like, let me just give you my money. It was kind of funny, but it was kind of cool because it was, to my knowledge, a pretty new concept, right? and it just looked cool, and it was a fun game. I enjoyed it. I didn't play the anything else with that franchise, but the first one I did enjoy it.
Well, so as you can see, for the past few years, Sony America's fruits of their labor, so to speak, are not paying off at all based on the dev time and budgets used. You likely also noticed that every game I mentioned in some way was either tied to Sweet Baby Inc., like Spider-Man 2 and Ragnarok for sure. And then the other games that massively underperformed, like Horizon 2 and Last of Us 2, they are very female-centric, pro-diversity, EI, and all that other nonsense. When you compare all of these games to their original offerings, they all featured either less diversity or DEI, and had strong male presences, the only anomaly here being Horizon Zero Dawn. But we do need to remember that Horizon Zero Dawn sale numbers are inflated, because that game was regularly packaged with PS4 console sales. But in terms of Last of Us 1 with Joel, Spider-Man 2018 with a real heroic Peter Parker, and God of War 2018 being a very male-centric game and not making Kratos into a whiny baby and so on, the sequels did not do enough in comparison. This then brings us to another game I love called Days Gone. As I'm told, Sony barely marketed this game as they had little faith in it.
That was a really good game too. It's on the channel if you want to watch it. I could put a link or put it up there or something. I don't know, but it completed the game. It's good stuff.
And yet even then, it sold 7 million copies right out of the gate and costed significantly less than their other first-party titles. As of right now, it's claimed by this insider source that Days Gone has actually outsold Last of Us 2. But Sony won't reveal this, because this then leads into another big scoop. Allegedly, one of the major reasons why Days Gone sequel was cancelled was because reviewers obviously didn't like the white male protagonist.
Oh, geez.
But the other major...
That is so depressing. And that makes me mad, because Days Gone, that was a good game, and I would really like to see a sequel to that game, because it would be... Well, I mean, if they do it right, it'll be really good. I would love to see the continuation of the characters in the first game.
Major reason was that Naughty Dog saw Days Gone as a threat to their Last of Us franchise, and that Naughty Dog used their leverage as the Western golden goose, so to speak, to strong-arm Sony America into not developing a sequel, because they didn't want another zombie third-person first-party game to compete with them, especially since Days Gone sold well with way less marketing push compared to Last of Us Part 2. Could it be jealousy? Apparently, yeah. Instead, as I'm told, Ben's studio, which made Days Gone, was actually redirected to assist with the now cancelled Last of Us multiplayer project, which instead is kind of a weird twist of irony if you look at it. So in this at least, we now have a clearer picture of Sony America's failures. Their big gambles are not paying off. I mean, their most recent golden goose they thought would turn it for them was actually, Concord. That was 100%.
That was the golden turd, not the golden egg that they hoped it was going to be.
As I'm told, a Sony America push. Sony Japan had very little influence on that being something that they wanted to do or make. As I'm told about Concord actually, many of the devs at Firewalk were very confident that Sony America would not cancel the game because of what the game represented for the company and the agenda at large. Sony America assured Firewalk that they were safe and Concord would come back better than ever in the future. However, as I'm told, the reason why Concord did die and Firewalk was closed was because of Sony Japan. During a company vote, Sony Japan overruled Sony America and rejected their proposition to allow Concord to be revived, claiming that the game was a massive failure and there was no reason to bring it back and waste more resources. Instead, this has led to what my source was told to cause Sony in general to opt for a tax write-off of Concord and Firewalk instead. My source told me this write-off has led to Sony recouping somewhere between 25 to around 40% of the cost for Concord and Firewalk now that they wrote it off for a tax write-off. Wow. So let's say that they spent 400 million, they got about maybe 170 million-ish. I would wager more like 150, but it's somewhere in that range. Basically, Sony got back enough in that tax write-off to create 2 whole Ghost of Tsushimas in total. Fun fact, by the way, Tsushima costed about 60 to 70 million to make, the more you know.
Wow.
But as I'm told, this veto to not revive Concord and kill yet another project, it pushed Sony America to become very infuriated to no end. This was not good for Sony America, as I'm told, because it wasn't their first blunder in the multiplayer space, due to obviously the Last of Us multiplayer game getting cancelled too, which also led to mass layoffs as well. And this actually leads to another big failure, as I'm told, coming from Sony America, which is Jade Raymond's Fair Games. So Jade Raymond, who worked at Ubisoft and founded Haven Studios, which is a Sony first-party company that was also bought from the get-go in a similar fashion to how Firewalk was for Concord. Haven, by the way, is full of ex-Ubisoft devs as well, and as you can see from the one trailer available for Fair Games currently, it looks like Ubisoft DEI nonsense, let's be real. Most of the devs, as I'm told at Haven, they worked on Watch Dogs specifically, and yeah, it shows, and not in a good way either, mind you. Sony Japan apparently is keeping a very close eye on Fair Games, as already internally, they are feeling the pressure to deliver in the wake of Concord's massive failure. Apparently, Sony Japan is even ready to Concord the crap out of Haven and Fair Games 2 if needed, which means that game could get cancelled before it even comes out if things don't improve. And then it could just lead to another tax write-off situation and would be yet another massive crack in Sony America's armor at this point, along with all the other failures. This brings me to another scoop, which is yet again Sony America trying to score more wins in their push for DEI slop. My source then told me about Ghost of Yotei, so apparently the reason why we got an early look at Yotei was actually because of the bad PR Assassin's Creed Shadows was getting. The Torigate controversy especially was a big reason why Yotei's trailer was revealed earlier than expected. If you don't remember, the Torigate thing was that figurine that Ubisoft revealed which had Yasuke and Naoe posing with a broken Torigate, which was a symbol of Hiroshima and the atomic bomb, which had...
Like, how does that team how do they miss that? There's no way they could have missed it. It was done on purpose, but why? Why not just make like a complete Torigate? It would have worked just fine with just, the way they had that figurine set up, right? But no, they had to do this, and on purpose, just yet another slap in the face of the Japanese culture. Oh my gosh. That whole team needs to just be wiped from the company that we're doing the cultural I don't know, inputs or whatever you want to call it, because they failed epically on every level.
Has zero connection to Yasuke or Naoe or that time period at all. And Ubisoft just kind of used it.
Well, and that's true. That's a whole nother thing. It wasn't part of the time period, but they shoved it in there. It's just so rude. It's so rude.
Well, they're idiots. That's why. Anyways, this led to Sony wanting to capitalize on the failure of Shadows, which is why Yotei got revealed so early. This, according to my source, explains why people at Sony felt blindsided by the reveal of Yotei. They weren't told that this was getting revealed so early. And this also ties into what I said previously in other Scoop videos when it came to Yotei, which is that Sony Japan felt blindsided because they were under the impression that Yotei was supposed to be Tsushima 2. If you didn't watch those other vids of mine, to reiterate it here, I was told that Yotei was originally a sequel to Tsushima with Jin Sakai as the main character. But it got...
Which is what everybody wanted. I mean, I think what they're doing with this so that it's like you could have different ghosts, the way they're setting it up. And that's cool, because then you can just kind of have different ghosts in different eras, and you could do a lot of different games and then create awesome new characters in each of those iterations, which then could carry on their own, set of sequels and whatever. This thing could really branch out fast, but everybody wanted to see Jin again from Tsushima. I mean, it's not ridiculous. Like I said, this is a cool concept, and I have no problems with her being a woman or whatever, but they should have really done a true sequel to the Tsushima game. So
got repurposed and then changed to fit a new character over Jin instead. Again, yes, a push by Sony America.
Yeah.
There's an obvious pattern here for these kinds of things.
And I thought Tsushima was just an absolutely gorgeous, another masterpiece. Sucker Punch did a great job.
As I'm told, alongside the plentiful of games not performing as well, all from Sony America, as I said before, that Yotei was also getting criticized by Sony Japan too. As that side of Sony was not happy with Yotei removing Jin, as they saw a sequel to Tsushima with Jin as a surefire mega hit.
Duh. Of course it would have been a surefire mega hit. I mean, that's what blows me away. That's what actually blows me away, that they would purposely change it up. Like I said, they should have been have this one on the back burner to set up the whole not anybody, but different people can have the mantle of the ghost, right? Whatever they're making that into. But yeah, they dropped the ball. They dropped the ball for sure.
Which, yeah, it would have been, especially in this era, but Sony America decided again to be morons and push agenda and female main characters instead. Overall, Sony Japan feels, as I'm told, that Sony America is completely out of touch with what players want these days.
Yeah.
Herman Hulst, who is currently the head of PlayStation, was originally the guy who shepherded Horizon at Guerrilla Games. And it's no coincidence that once the guy who pushed for a female-led action series with Horizon would start pushing for more experiences like it, and by the way, Concord has been reported to be Herman Hulst's baby, and well, we know how that goes. But it's very clear that it's not paying off, which then now this circles us all the way back to Sony Japan and their From Software situation. Like I said, Sony is in what can only be called a woke civil war. One side wants to be more From Software game-wise, pushing for stuff more like collaboration with games like Final Fantasy, like they did with 16 and Rebirth, which, by the way, that did not sell the way they intended either. There's blame on both sides, and the other side is hell-bent on the whole DI nonsense. And they also want to push stuff like more Horizon games, which, by the way, a multiplayer live service game is coming next year from Horizon.
Wow.
And it actually got leaked, and that was confirmed too, so I guess you can probably expect that to get announced probably during the Game Awards, I would guess. And once you factor in the multitude of other failures like Concord, and of course, Fair Games is still in the pipeline and more, Sony America is trying to turn PlayStation into this very westernized-centric beast, if you will. And it's causing this weird agenda-filled woke civil war between both sides of the company. And I know some of you may be asking, how could Sony let this happen in the first place? But you need to understand that Sony America was doing just fine originally, and they started to go off the deep end in 2017 or so, and then onward. It's kind of like...
Oh, really? That far back? I didn't think so. I thought it would be more like around 2020 during the pandemic, when everybody went crazy.
Being in a relationship, one minute your significant other is chill and cool, and then out of nowhere they kind of just go crazy, and then you want to start fixing things, but they can't calm down, and you're trying to fix it, but try to get it to go back to what it was before. So Sony's in a weird toxic relationship, bad breakup basically right now, and you can definitely blame Sony America for not wanting things like the Bloodborne remaster. Of course, hopefully Sony Japan leverages their power enough to get things like a Bloodborne remaster to happen. It could be happening right now. I pray that it is. I mean, they did leverage the Blue Point Demon Souls remake as well, but as of right now, that is what is happening with Sony Japan and PlayStation and all of that. A lot of their games are not doing as well as they'd hoped, and oh crap, I forgot to mention that another big contentious upcoming game for Sony internally is also Marvel's Wolverine. That slipped my mind. My bad. So Insomniac's Wolverine game is apparently also being heavily criticized by Sony Japan as well. And it's being strong-armed by Sony Japan to reject political agenda pushing when it comes to what that game entails. Originally, as I was told, not by this source actually, but another anyway, is that Marvel's Wolverine was originally intended to end with Logan as Old Man Logan. And the game's ending would heavily hint that a sequel to Wolverine and to Insomniac's X-Men game that also got leaked, that it would actually feature Wolverine as X-23 or Laura instead, sidelining Logan pretty much immediately out of the gate. Similar to how Spider-Man was sidelined in Spider-Man 2's ending going forward too. We already know, in case you missed it, that Insomniac's Wolverine has already changed hands in terms of directors and creative vision earlier this year. The original creative director and game directors, whose names are Brian Horton and Cameron Christian, are no longer on Wolverine. Brian Horton has actually left Insomniac entirely and is now working at Xbox on Perfect Dark, which has also been heavily criticized for having that modern audience ugly woman man jaw look to it already. Cameron Christian is still at Insomniac, but they're working on something else apparently now. So the new creative director for Wolverine is Marcus Smith, and the new game director is Mike Daly. Marcus Smith worked on Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart as one of 3 creative directors, and Mike Daly also worked on Rift Apart as one of its 3 game directors. Don't ask me why it has so many directors, I don't know. So could this change of leadership be something influenced?
Too many cooks in the kitchen. It sounds like. That'd be difficult.
Internally to change Wolverine's direction? Possibly yes. We also know that Sweet Baby
Okay, that was brutal. Jeez Louise, right through the wall.
Inc. has worked on Wolverine, but the former narrative director Mary Kenny has also since left Insomniac, who defended SBI openly and is now working at CD Projekt Red as a writer on Project Orion, the next Cyberpunk game. So maybe, I can't confirm this 100%, but it's possible that Insomniac may be trying to fix Wolverine and not make it into a DEI slop game like originally intended. Although, if that original ending sticks and they do the whole, apparently Wolverine's like healing factor stops working some way into the game and that causes him to get old and that's why he's dying, I don't know. That's originally what they're doing apparently. And the whole point is that they want to sideline Wolverine to make way for Lara, and that's why the main villain is, what's his name? Mr. Sinister.
Yeah.
And he's the one that basically makes a clone of Lara in this version. Anyway, yeah, if this all actually happens, they don't change it, fans will be pissed, and understandably so.
Yeah.
For what I'm told by the same source for all of these things, Sony Japan is trying to steer the mistakes of Sony America in the right direction going forward. They want to reject the wokeness and bring PlayStation back in line with what it was more known for pre-2020. Which, funnily enough, is when a lot of this DEI slop started getting made and normalized, which was in 2020. Okay, I think that's everything. Let me just double check. Yep, I should have more in my next video. In terms of Sony's television offerings, especially The Last of Us Season 2. I'll talk about that once I get more info on it, but I'll for sure have it for the next video. But this is what I've been told by one of my most trusted sources. Sony Japan wants to reject wokeness. They want to embrace what made PlayStation successful. Turn back to the old ways, if you will. They want to buy From Software and Kadokawa at large to retain its Japanese identity and ensure that PlayStation can rely on the surefire successes of places like From Software going forward. Sony America is crumbling, a lot of their stuff is failing, and even things like Wolverine are being changed. Although I don't know 100% if what is being changed is what truly matters or not. Also, by the way, Troy Baker is playing Mr. Sinister, if you want to know. Anyway, okay, that's it. Let me know what you think. I'm sure some will call me a liar. Hopefully, I've proven myself in other scoop videos to not be lying to you guys, but the internet is going to internet either way. Thanks for watching. Subscribe. Thanks to my supporters. I'll keep you updated on whatever I hear next. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you soon.
All right. Well, interesting. It is a little surprising that because on one hand, it seems like Sony Japan and Sony America are very woven together, but then in other instances, from what Endymion was talking about, it seems like they're kind of like separate in their decision making. So it's kind of weird. You'd think everything would like kind of funnel through one system, but anyways, I think it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing, and I hope that this wokeness DEI stuff just dies out from everything. There's no need for it. It's just not good. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed it. And if you like my reaction, if you like the video, then please consider subscribing and please leave your comments down below. I really appreciate it. All right. Well, I appreciate you guys. I love you. And until the next video, you guys stay safe and have a great day. All right. We'll see you later. Bye.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear. Let the thoughts build up until I can't hear.